Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Huntington here from Niche Site Project, and this is the Doug Show. Today, in this episode, we're going to talk to Mark Mars from Niche Website Builders, one of my friends. It's always fun to have Mark on the show, and we do have a little bit of a promo, at least if you are listening to this or watching it right when it's released. So with Niche Website Builders, you'll be able to get a discount on link building packages, a 15% discount or 15% additional content if you order one of the content packages. And I'm also offering up a bonus. I usually don't do this, and I'm not going to go into too many details, so I could just bring Mark on here. But check out the show notes, and you'll be able to find out what that bonus is. And Mark, how are you today?
I'm good. Good. I like that little teaser. You have to go to the show notes to find out what the bonus is. But yeah. Yeah, no, good. Thanks. How are you, Doug?
Doing awesome today. It's always, like I said, it's always fun to talk to you and hear what's going on at the agency and within your portfolio. And that's what we're going to focus on today, like what's working, maybe a couple other details along those lines. And I mean, I talk to a lot of people, but since you're running the agency, you have a lot more data and a lot more information, and you're having a lot more conversations. So before we get into the specifics, how's everything going? Any new products or anything interesting over at Niche Website Builders?
No, particularly no new products in particular. We recently launched the FAQ content, which we'll talk a little bit about today. We're seeing more and more results from that now. And that's kind of the main thing that's newish within the agency. So no other new services, just more of the same and improving our processes all the time.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, let's get into the specific actionable areas. And one of them is it looks like you're trying to do some smart branding here. So you're calling it tomb rating SEO. So what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, taking a leaf out of your book, Doug, with the KGR, So, we decided to give it a name because we're using this a lot and we're trying to explain it to clients. It's something that we tried out. It's not rocket science when you hear what it is, but it's kind of like a cool way to do some keyword research, essentially. We wanted to give it a name because we talk to people about it all the time, and actually we just wanted people to become familiar with what we're talking about. We're having to explain many steps of the process before we can understand what it is. So yeah, we call it tomb rating SEO. Essentially, we're using this mostly with our expired domain packages, although it applies to any site that already has some authority, already an existing site. So you can't really do this technique if your site is brand new and you've got no authority whatsoever. And I'll explain why. So basically what we're doing here is when we start with an expired domain or an existing site, we take a look, use Ahrefs to take a look at all of the competitors that are within that space. So we dig out the biggest list that we can find of direct competitors of the site that we're working on, or the domain that we're working with. And then we use some of the industry metrics like trust flow and domain rating, domain authority. And we basically take those metrics from all of the sites and all of the competitors that we found, including our own site. And then we simply just add up all of those metrics. So it's like 6 metrics that we have. We add them all up, and that gives us a number at the end, and then we just order the sites, including us and the competitors, from the highest number to the lowest number. And what's happening here is that we're trying to work out where our site or where our domain exists in the competitor landscape. What sites will we deem as a higher authority than us, and what sites will we deem as a lower authority. And by using a number of different metrics, we're kind of trying to level out that playing field, because none of the metrics are, endorsed by Google. They all have kind of slightly different numbers. So by using several different metrics, we're just trying to hopefully kind of flatten that kind of margin for error. But it's not perfect, but it's the tools that we've got to work with and the metrics we've got to work with. So yeah, so we get to that point where we know then which sites are above us and which sites are below us. in terms of authority. And then we take a look at all of the sites that are below us and see what keywords they're ranking for and what pages they're ranking for. And that, and what we're essentially doing here is saying, well, if these pages are lower authority than us and they can rank for these terms and they're getting traffic for these terms, chances are that we can rank for these terms as well. And when you think about it, if you do, in inverted commas, traditional keyword research, where you're just maybe using keyword difficulty scores or domain rating or something to try and, keyword difficulty scores to try and work out to try and find those low authority keywords. Generally what happens is you'll write a load of content and a whole bunch of it won't rank and never will rank. And you'll generally find that, averaged out, like 20% of your content is like 80% of your traffic. And so what we found here and what we're trying to do here is actually kind of increase that number. So actually, because the sites below us have already done the hard work in doing that keyword research, ranking for what they are able to rank for, we can essentially raid, in the tomb raiding expression, raid them for their best keywords and their best pages, with the thought being that if they can rank for them, then so can we. And that's essentially kind of our process that we've been using. And we've been doing this since the end of last year, and we just continue to see really good results for it. And we're just using that more and more for existing sites and age domains.
Got it. And so can you tell us all the metrics that you're adding together? So you have 6 of them, you said?
I think at the top of my head, it's domain rating, URL rating, so the Ahrefs metrics, domain authority, page authority, trust flow, and citation flow. There may be 8, but I think it's those 6 that we're using.
Okay.
Really.
And obviously some of those are page level and some are domain level. So are you just looking at the main domain URL and then looking at all the keywords? Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. So you're not, just to be clear for everyone watching, so you're not necessarily looking at every single page in every URL rating that you are in every individual domain.
No.
Okay.
That's right. No, yeah.
Okay.
And I guess the next step actually is one thing I've missed, that when we get to that point is that we're then, for the site that we've found that's ranking for a specific keyword or ranking a specific page, we then try to use, effectively correlate that page with the page that we create. So we'll roughly work out the number of words. We'll work out the number of words that page is, and generally we add around 10%, so that we can kind of go to a little bit more detail. But also it gets us to we're able to add into maybe FAQs to just give it a little bit more kind of topical authority as well. So we're trying to cover the same stuff that's already on that page, because we want it to, they've managed to rank with the way that they've structured the article and the topics that they've included. So we try to include that the same, and then maybe add a little bit more on, like I say, some FAQs just to make it actually better than the article that's already there.
Nice.
And so we're not having to use like correlation tools like Surfer or Market Muse or anything like that, because we're just correlating against one page. We're not trying to correlate against the top 10 or the top 3 or whatever. And actually we find that, it's just keyword research is easier and it's more effective this way around, because you're just finding the easy pages first, rather than trying to find a keyword. You use something like Surfer, you find that, you want to correlate against the top 10, but all the top 10 are like much more higher authority than you. And you have to kind of you probably just have to give up on that keyword because you're not going to rank for it. And then you have to do it again and again and again and again.
Sure.
And until you find some decent keywords that you can, rank for. And so, we generally correlate against the one page that is ranking, that we know what is working for somebody else.
Nice. And that's a good shortcut. I remember when we first started working together, I did ask about any on-site or content optimization tools. There's many of them out there. So, and you mentioned this, which, it makes good sense. You're just going straight to the individual source, which you're basing the content and the keyword competition from. So that makes sense to me. Are there any pitfalls with this? Do people need to watch out? Have you seen or heard of anyone making a mistake while trying to implement, now that you're, sharing these kind of techniques?
We've only just started publicly. Well, we've been sharing the technique for a little while, but we've only just given it first, actually giving it a name. So I'm not sure of anyone outside us that's following that technique. I'd love to know if anybody is or has. It's reasonably foolproof, I would say. I mean, I guess the one thing you've got to make sure is that you're picking the right competitors. Once you've done that, the rest should be pretty straightforward. As long as you know how to use Ahrefs and see which pages are ranking for a site, and are able to dig into that data a little bit, then yeah, it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I can't think of anything other than if someone just pulls the stats wrong out of a tool, which would just be a plain old mistake. But yeah, it seems fairly straightforward. Or, I mean, the other thing is I see this a lot with KGR is the content's just shitty. Like if someone writes it and it's just really bad and it's poor grammar and someone won't get past the intro, well, that's just not going to work because it's so poorly written. And sometimes people, they don't know how bad the content is and they just don't have an eye to judge like how poor it is. I see that far too often. It's kind of amazing these days. So
yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Anything else with the TOMB rating to throw in before we move on?
No, I think the only thing is I'd say that we've got lots of good examples of this, but I used this on one of my sites from my own portfolio as well, which I started around about November last year. So we're 8 or 9 months in. The site's getting around 125,000 visitors a month at the moment from about 200 pages. So it's purely info content. It's the niche that it's in pretty much lends itself mostly to info content. There probably will be some other ways, but there's not products or anything like that. But yeah, I used this technique and this is when we were first kind of trying it out. This was one of the test sites that we did, and it just grew really quickly. Once it was an expired, so what I should say is it was an expired domain, but it was quite low. It was like a DR12, something along those lines. It had just under 100 referring domains. After a couple of months, it really started to take off. It's got, like I say, it's 125,000 sessions a month from 200 or so pages. So I've been a bit slow, but I've just got that sort of approved on Azoic now. So we'll see how that goes. But in theory, 120,000 page views, it should be earning maybe 2,500 a month, maybe 3,000 even. So we'll see what that comes out of that.
Very cool. And you said you just got it approved for Ezoic?
Yep.
And were you monetizing it all before?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I hadn't got around to it yet. But.
Gotcha. And actually, I was going to ask, related. I have a couple sites where I'm still letting them grow and I haven't started monetizing them much. So you said you just didn't get around to it. Is there some threshold that you were, sort of waiting for, or would advise people to wait for when they're growing a site and they have the flexibility?
It just grew pretty quickly. A few months ago it was 20, 30,000, and then suddenly it just grew really quickly and then there's the approval process, which takes a couple of weeks for Azoic, but there's no threshold now with Azoic. You can kind of get in at any level, or it used to be 10,000 sessions. So as long as your site meets certain criteria, you can get in at the lower level now as well. So there was no reason for waiting other than I was just busy doing other stuff.
Right. It grew a little too fast. Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to check back in once it's been able to be optimized and all that kind of stuff. So very cool. Yep. And just curious so it's 200 articles. About, if you had to estimate like the average article length for those 200 articles.
Yeah, I did know this. It's around, I think it's around 1,300. 1,300 words. So they're not huge long articles, and they're all actually no, that's a lie. There are some that are particularly long, and there are some that are particularly short, but generally they're all around in that range. just because that's where the competition was, and that was good enough to rank. So they're not particularly long articles either, so it's not a huge number of words given the number of pages, really.
And then what are the plans for it? Are you going to keep adding a lot more keyword or a lot more articles because there are a lot more keywords? Or are you in an optimization phase, adding FAQs and such?
No, so definitely going to be just continue to add more keywords, so more pages. So I think I could easily double the number of pages without exhausting everything that I've got, maybe a little bit more. So it's just a matter of if there's going to be enough. I think I could end up writing for quite a long time on these, but it's just a matter of like, at some point, there's not going to be enough search volume for it to be kind of worth continue to write every single article that could possibly write on this topic. So,
and are you thinking you're going to sort of keep it for the long haul, or is it one you're going to flip potentially?
No, for the long haul. So I've been purposely. So Adam, the co-founder of Niche Website Builders, like he's a fast flipper, so he'll flip stuff within a month or a couple of months. I'm kind of more of a long, like he generally buys and then grows and then sells, and whereas I generally start, keep them for longer, like a year or two, and then sell. And I've always had that kind of sell point in mind. But just recently, I've kind of wanted to just build in like a foundation of sites that are just for cash flow that I'm going to keep for a much longer period of time. I don't know how many years, but they're not really designed to sell. They're just designed to make, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 a month just for on an ongoing basis, and just kind of maintain them. So I'm kind of continuing to do the flip thing with other sites, but I just want to add this additional level of just like, these are just ones that info evergreen sites that should just last forever. And also just keep an eye on them. So
very cool.
Yeah.
So moving on to a product you mentioned before, one that I really like and just a technique that I enjoy is the FAQ service. So essentially that is adding frequently asked questions, but do you want to dive into some of the differences in the way that you guys implement and maybe some of the results if you have any examples fresh in mind?
Yeah, so we've kind of used some tools, but used some of the tools that we've been developed kind of internally to really mine like all of the FAQs that we can find on specific topics. So we end up normally with a few hundred kind of FAQ questions, or many hundred, in fact, and then we have to consolidate them down and work out, which ones are kind of that's basically asking the same question but a different way. And we generally do that by, it's simply like Googling them. And if you end up with the same results by Googling 2 different questions, you basically got the same search intent. So you kind of need to decide which one you're going to use. And you can kind of, I'll leave it at that. But that's kind of what we're doing. So without FAQ service, there's 2 ways that you can use it. And both have been really effective for us. Is you're just literally doing it as a keyword research thing. So you're essentially answering a question, depending how long the answer is, or a series of questions on a topic, and create an article out of it. And those can be like, really good as for kind of new articles, but it also works great for supplementing existing articles. So, once you've written some articles and they've been sitting around for a year or 2, you really should be looking to refresh them because they've been sitting there for a while. They're growing stale. Google's going to eventually kind of just let them, ride off as newer articles kind of come into play and rank above you. So you kind of want to kind of try and keep them fresh. So this is a great, like an easy way really of kind of just adding some content to existing content and changing the publish date and refreshing that content. But also generally, it can really help improve, what you had before, because, Google wants, whichever article you write, it wants you to answer the questions of the searcher. So if you're adding some of those questions that are commonly asked within the topic that article is about, then Google's going to more likely see much more favorably, because you're answering some of the questions that people are asking, and that Google are telling us they're asking with the people also asked boxes. So that's generally the way that we use it. Again, we're just finding, there is varying success with the FAQs stuff, but generally, if we end up creating a bunch of content, generally we'll overall we'll see kind of positive results on existing articles, but also it's great, as I say, for new articles because you're covering a lot of questions being answered in one go on a topic.
And you mentioned maybe combining a series of questions. How do you sort of determine that? Is it, fairly manual and you just think about, oh, I can group these questions because they're all about digital SLR cameras that people use for YouTube. So, all right, all these questions are about that. I'll just throw them in. It's 1,300 words or so. This will be great.
So we're using Keyword Cupid to do some of that clustering for us. So it's slightly less manual. So within Keyword Cupid, you're able to do that. So you're able to throw it in kind of a bunch of keywords, and it kind of will cluster them for you. We're still doing like a manual exercise after because it's not always 100%. It doesn't always 100% make sense. So it kind of needs a sanity check from a real human being. But yeah, that's generally kind of the way that we're doing it. So it cuts down on the manual time.
Okay. And I think, like I asked before, any issues with, using this technique, and you already covered part of it where searcher intent is something that you could check by Googling similar terms and seeing if you get the same results just in a different order, something like that. So any other issues with using the FAQ technique?
Yeah, I can't think of anything on the top of my head. I'll tell you what, Adam deals with this stuff all the time because he's doing the keyword research for the content stuff. So he'll probably have some better answers. So if you I think you're getting Adam on in a few weeks' time on the podcast. So yeah, ask him that question. He might have some better answers for you. But I can't think of anything. But he's involved more in the day-to-day of that.
Okay, and just I was going to say, I know I've seen a lot of like great impacts when I've done this for the last several years. And I know one site that I've neglected, funny enough, especially from an SEO standpoint, is Niche Site Project, especially going back and updating things. So for example, there's things that I wrote a few years ago and I've updated them over time. And I honestly, I don't have much else to say on it. Like, I think it stands. I am resisting going back to update things and refresh them like you're talking about, and maybe adding FAQs. And it's only a matter of time where I'm going to have to go back and do those sort of things. But it's funny. A lot of SEOs or marketing people neglect their own sites and we have our own affiliate marketing sites or our own content sites where we're implementing better. But I know it's really easy to not blog and not post on your own site. So I struggle with it.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. All right. And wrapping it up, I know in some of the pre-recording chat, a lot of this is really just about content. So I know you kind of wanted to make a point about that, but what do you have to say around that? It's all about content.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I think the reason I kind of want to mention this is that there's lots of things people are talking about Core Web Vitals and kind of other kind of issue things with Google. Google updates and things like that. And at the end of the day, the way that we do it, with our own sites and our own portfolios, but also kind of what we try to do with clients is that, at the end of the day, if you just keep churning out content that's been got some good research behind it, and keep publishing new content, you're going to get there in the end. You're going to be successful. And I did to that. Links is also. Content's still number one. You can't get anywhere without any content. You got to have content. But then links is still a close second. And what we've kind of found in some of this process for when we're doing this tomb raiding SEO is that sometimes we see some real outlier sites. So we'll see a site that's a DR1 that's got kind of no links to it. barely. It's an outlier. It's outranking sites that are much higher authority. And they're great if you can find those, because they're obviously doing something right, because they haven't got the authority, they haven't got the backlinks, yet they're still managing. So that would suggest that on page is, where they've got it right. So that's why we try and correlate against those sites. However, more and more when I'm kind of researching these sites and seeing these outliers, I'm seeing that generally over time it kind of catches up with them. So they might have extraordinary growth, but eventually their lack of authority kind of catches up with them, and you start to see them coming down the other side a little bit, or a lot in some cases. And I think that's just because like I say, Google catches up with their lack of authority. So I think once you start to really get some traction and get with some content, if you've got a brand new domain, you're not using an expired domain, then definitely I think once you start seeing that traction, is just to firm up that kind of success that you're having with some links. And I think things are going to stand in better stead kind of longer term.
Very good. And I know I have seen some of those anomalies as well, and you've tried to figure out, how is a site getting so much estimated traffic based on the tools that we have like Ahrefs or SEMrush with, virtually no links. And, like you said, potentially Google catches up with them and they see, there's hardly any authority. Like, it's kind of weird. But then also with a tomb rating strategy, there's SEOs out there that are identifying and then they're publishing similar content. So the traffic drops, even if, nothing else changes, just because, maybe you're working on link building, or you're working on an age domain, for example. And your example was great too on the all info site with 200 posts. It really, it had a handful of links. So you said around 100, but the domain rating was like 12, which is fairly modest. That's pretty low. Like, someone could get a site built up to that in not too long. I would say a few months to be able to hit a DR of 12. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll give one little plug. We haven't talked too much about link building, but one of the services that people can get a discount on is the Shotgun Skyscraper, right? So that'll be 15% cheaper.
That's right.
Okay. And you guys worked on a campaign for me, and it was a brand new site, and you guys took it to about a DR 48 or 49 in about 6 months or so. Now, I know some people are nervous to build links to a brand new site, but I'm a marketer, and when I've launched new stuff, like I have a new podcast, I've told a lot of people about it. And guess what? It has a lot of links because I know a lot of people, and my partner, he knows a lot of people too. So it's not that weird if you have a plan and you're a marketer. Like, that's what people do. They market their stuff. So anyway, I had you guys work with me for several months. You did an awesome job. And I know a lot of people that I referred had great success with the Shotgun Skyscraper as well. So I hope it's still, running as well. I've pulled back the throttle on that, but any comments on the Shotgun campaigns that may be going on?
Yeah. So what I would say, a couple of things is, one, what I found is people vastly underestimate how many links you can build and the velocity you can build. Yes, you don't want to go too crazy, but actually the number of links you can build each month and still be within that kind of safe zone is a lot higher than people think. People start thinking once you get to 5 a month, you're like, well, like, kind of slow down on a new site, but it's not. If you're doing 25 a month, even on the new site, it's fine. Like, we've done it time and time again, and not seen any kind of negative impact on that. So I think all I say is, like, the threshold is higher than you think for, like, what's acceptable or not. Now, if you're trying to build 100 links a day, then that might be something that's a bit more of a problem. So that's the first thing. But 25 less than one a day, like you say, if somebody's launched a new site, there's no reason why they couldn't kind of get that if they've got an audience or are able to share it or something. Second thing I'd say is that, it's Shotgun's still working. Like, we had a period where when we first launched the shotgun service over a year ago now, we were able to get like lots and lots of free links, and it was great. And we kind of had to adapt the service as we go, as people become more savvy about the value of links, and end up having to pay more of the time for links. But that doesn't mean just because there's a concern amongst a lot of people that if you're paying for a link, it's bad, and like, whereas the same link I could have got a month ago before was free, and now they've clocked on, so they're charging us, and therefore now it's bad. It doesn't quite work like that. So, yes, you might have to pay for some links now. Yes, you can still get some free ones if you want, but they're kind of, it's not as easy as it once was. But as long as you do some proper due diligence on the sites that you're getting the links from, and you're making sure that they're good, they're not link farms, and I think we've done a podcast before on like the things you should look out for when like building links from sites that. So as long as you're doing that due diligence, then it's still good, and it's still a great way it's still a relatively cheap way of acquiring links. Even through our service compared to our link pack service or other guest posting services, it's still a really good value. And you get a Shotgun Skyscraper piece of content as well included within that price as well.
And one last question around that. So you get this great Skyscraper article, and I think the ones that you wrote for me were 4,000 words or so. So really, really comprehensive, a lot of different topics in there. How many internal links from that Skyscraper post do you recommend, like to try to spread that link juice to other parts of a person's site?
I don't think there's a limit on it. It's just to know that the more pages that you add links to, the more you're going to reduce the amount of link juice that you're passing to each page. So the number of outbound links on a page it's kind of like you're splitting it. So all of the link juice that we bring into that Skyscraper article, if the more pages you're linking out to, then that's going to divide that link juice that you're spreading, which is fine. You can, and there's no harm in doing that. It's just to be aware if you want to specifically rank a couple of different pages, then maybe you just choose one or two and pass as much of that link juice through as possible. But there's no hard or fast rule. It's just knowing that you're diluting if you're doing that.
Sure. Got it. Awesome. Well, people can check out the deal, and like I said, 15% discount or 15% additional content depending on what you order. You have a suite of services and plenty of options. Get the other bonus, which you'll have to check the show notes to see what that is. But it's pretty good. So Mark, anything else on your mind before we wrap?
I don't think so. No, all good. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Always good to catch up, and have a good evening over there.
Great. Thanks.